Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters across our nation. It's going to be an exciting time over the next couple months as we go into the election cycle. We all know what has happened over the last couple weeks and the last week with the CCJ and the awaiting of the decision. We know, regardless of what happens with that CCJ decision, we are in election mode. And what is going to be important to us as a nation and us as citizens is how we start to debate the issues that we face going forward. We look across the last 4 years, and I believe most of us would have been able then to decide what will be our decision going forward. You know, many people compare 23 years versus the former 28 years of the former government, the PNC government, the 23 years of the PPP government, and now the 4 years of the PNC APNU government again. And when you go into the correlation between the 28 years of the PNC government and the 4 years of the APNU AFC PNC government, the correlation is fairly significant. There are similarities that exist that actually mirrors what happened in the 28 years of the PNC rule. We know the economy was stagnated. We know the debt that we required to pay back to the international community was significant. We knew that the population was suffering. Many left our shores in the 28 years of the PNC rule. And in these 4 years of another PNC rule, we've been able to determine that the correlation between the 28 and the 4, there's no difference. We go back to the 23 years of the PPP, and most people would say it was a struggle initially for the government to pay back the debt, bring the debt down, get the economy going, get the infrastructure rebuilt. Bauxite industry, the gold industry, the rice industry, the sugar industry. Many industries had to be rebuilt over the 23 years. And now in the 4 years, again, I mentioned the correlation between the 28 years of the PNC government, all happened again. And if you just look over the last couple days, you have seen ministers that have resigned from their portfolios, and ministers took over their job. But yet those same people were brought back. No difference in salary, no difference in benefits, no difference in their authority. And they were brought back to continue their work in government. That's a government that continues to spend our taxpayers' money without thinking the detrimental factors that is causing us, the citizens, to suffer. And with that alone, as we go into the election cycle, again, it doesn't really matter what the CCJ ruling is now. We are going into the election cycle, and us as citizens got to determine what is best for our country going forward. And I believe, you know, some people, including a lot of PPP supporters and other opposition and government supporters, would say, maybe it was time for a change back in 2015. And maybe that's a good thing that happened to the PPP, because now we can say with confidence that the determination of which is better governance, which political party is better for our nation going forward. The new generation that didn't have an opportunity to experience the 28 years of suffering can now determine even though the excitement in 2015 was to vote for something different, and many people said the PP had their run, let's make a change. Now that new generation with the older generation can make a substantial decision that this current government, the correlation again between the PNC 28 years of suffering and the 4 years of the APNU government, AFC, PNC government, that now we as citizens can make that determination that we do not want to see this current government have another 5 years in government. So regardless of Charnad's vote, regardless of no confidence vote, regardless of the CCJ decision, we now have a choice. And when we make a choice with data, and we make a choice with facts, we make a choice based on what we have seen prior to 2015 and what we have seen post 2015, we can feel satisfied that we are making the right decision going forward. And as you compare the programs of the PPP and the PNC, and that's where we are going to be faced with over the next couple of months, how do we compare the programs of the PPP and the PNC, call them APNU, call them AFC? You just, I would advise you get a Ttable. You get a blank sheet of paper as big as you can. Draw a T. PPP on one side, PNC on the other side. You can add AFC and APNU. And go through what you benefited under the PPP government, from housing to infrastructure to the economy to a growing economic boom, stable currency, Guyana currency versus the US currency, stable growth, foreign reserves very solid, a country on path for future development. That's on one side of the Ttable. Go on the PNC side of the Ttable, the APNU side, and look at what happened. Stagnation, fuel prices up, taxes on every possible thing you could think about, government spending our money without our permission. Somebody asked a question in the papers today that Compton Reed, who was an ordinary citizen somewhere in this country, that filed a significant case for the no confidence. Who funded that? I would beg to say all of us need to answer that question. Why is our taxpayers' money being used to fund a case which embarrasses us around the world? And that's one of the most disappointing things that happened this last week. Is as Guyanese, intelligent, brilliant people, we were embarrassed in the Caribbean court at arguments that the government portrayed that really was not rational, it was not factual, it was not intellectual, and we, Guyanese, were the one that were embarrassed. And you have to wonder, why were embarrassed when it's our taxpayers' money that funded an argument that none of the judges saw were even there in terms of credibility? Now, we don't know where the decision would go, and really at this point, we believe that the decision should be a right decision, that the majority is 33, the fact that the vote was valid. But regardless, and I want to switch to the regardless of the points tonight, and I'll take your phone calls as we go forward. Regardless of the decision with the CCJ, we are in an election cycle. And that's where we, the brilliant minds that were left here in Guyana, those of the government that went to Trinidad to argue a case that didn't fit, we even had ministers of the government on our taxpayers' dollars flew to Trinidad, stay at 4 to 5-star hotels, limousines, special cars to sit in the gallery. Where were all of us watching the CCJ? Right in our homes, on the internet. Why were our taxpayers' money used to send so many ministers to sit in the gallery, pay expensive lawyers from Belize, Barbados, wherever they were from? They were so incompetent that it was embarrassing for a nation to hire Caribbean other lawyers that didn't even have a clue what our Constitution said. Many said, basically, I didn't know the Constitution said that. Many argued a point that really even our own local lawyers were able to counter-argue or able to present a better case. Our local lawyers, especially on the PPP side or on the side that argued against the government, were brilliant. We were proud of those lawyers representing our nation. And imagine government had to hire lawyers outside of our country to represent us. You mean government don't have enough lawyers to represent us as a government, and to use our taxpayers' money to argue a case that most likely is invalid? But the point tonight in my discussion with you, and as I will take your phone calls, is are we thinking about the future of election? Are we ready to make that decision? Good evening. Can I help you?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Let's speak on what really money they want of this. If the finance section want that money, sir, this nation know that yes, they have the money.
To spend the money, to take the money from?
Yeah, where they get the money from?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. But no, they got the money from the coffers that we are paying the taxes, 200 plus taxes on vehicle license, on fuel, on medical supplies, on raw materials. Every day we go shopping. Every day we drive our cars. Every day we go get our license or renew our car license or personal license. These are new taxes that we are paying. $88 billion worth of new taxes. So that money was taken for what? To fight a case. Is the government afraid of elections? The fact that no confidence vote was valid. The speaker, the government at the time, the population all believe that the no confidence vote was valid. Some brilliant lawyer, guess what? That lawyer that actually said that 34 was majority, while the CCJ was going on last week, was with me attending the oil conference in Houston, Texas. Imagine the government did not even hire the lawyer that came up with the case. Did he refuse to go to the Caribbean court? Was he too busy going after the oil? Did he believe his argument was valid? You would think the person that came up with the idea that 34 was the majority in Parliament would be arguing, because he is a senior lawyer in Guyana, would be arguing that case in front of the judges. He wasn't. I was at the oil conference last week in Houston, Texas, where Guyana was the showcase. We've got a lot of ways to go to present to the world what our future. The government didn't really show up. Private sector did. What was missing in that conversation is what is our vision for our nation. When we are talking to large investors around the world, we can't be showcasing ordinary, basic functions. We've got to look at what do we want Guyana to look like. What are the components that will make our nation great? What are the key sectors that we are looking to develop in order to grow our economy, to create wealth for every citizen in our nation? That is what Guyana future looks like. not showing up to an oil conference, setting the secondary components of the government to tell a story that didn't make sense. We've got to get out of that. And the reason why government was more wasting our money at the CCJ instead of the largest oil conference in the world, where we should have been developing the plan to present to the world where Guyana will be, what it will look like, what is needed, where they fit, how do they work with our local companies, how do it benefit our citizens in our nation. That is what the future of Guyana should look like. Good evening, can I help you?
Hello, good night.
Good night.
I am on the air.
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay, I would like to ask you this even. How is it that the CCJ could change the Constitution of Guyana without the consent of the citizenry?
I don't believe the CCJ intention is to change the Constitution.
So how could they vote against the no confidence motion?
And I don't believe they can. I mean, they are there to interpret. I mean, all cases were presented. I mean, in every realistic conclusion that they cannot vote against the Constitution. Yes.
The CCJ is the highest court in the region. And yet, the government kind of making a statement that the highest court of the land, they make a ruling. There is no contradictory to their standings as representing the Constitution of Guyana.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you, sir. Thank you. The caller is absolutely right. Our supreme law of the land is the Constitution. The Constitution allowed for everything that happened. Imagine the Speaker of the House stamp, hit that gravel, the motion is passed. You had the Prime Minister, the President, the Parliament, ministers. It's like, I put it as, when before the no confidence vote, the minister says, bring it on, let's fight, let's go into the ring. And boom, a knockout blow, down on the canvas. They got up, acknowledged the defeat. And then a couple days later, again, the lawyer that said 34 didn't even go to the court to fight it. Came up with a concept, an idea, and everybody ran with it. It was embarrassing. But I believe the CCJ, rightfully, with what the courts are all about, interpret the Constitution. I don't believe they will have any ability to change the Constitution. I think our Constitution is solid and we need to uphold the Constitution. But the question is, why was government, they first accepted it, and then when they realized they have to go to election, they got paranoid. I've never seen a bunch of people got so much paranoism when they realized, oh crap, we've got to go tell the electorate we didn't do anything in the last 4 years. We better stall this as long as we can. Let's get ministers out there now. Let's shift them around. Let's do all kinds of things. Let's make people minister of youth. 3 ministers of youth I think we have right now. Let's show that we are doing something. Let's go put the propaganda machine out there. But we as citizens, again, remember I started with the Ttable. What have you experienced in these 4 years versus what you've experienced over the last 10 plus years? And people will say, give them more time. If you can't come up with a single program in 4 years, when you waited 23 years to get in power, imagine the PNC APNU waited 23 years to get into power. They got into power, and you tell me they can't have a single plan ready to implement, and you're going to go to the electorate and says, give us more time? For what? 23 years you should have been planning. You should have documents. You should have funding. You should have investors. You should have something ready to deliver. They got into power and go, oh crap, we're in power. What do? That is not the government you want to give any more time to. Good evening, can I help you?
Yeah, hello?
Yes, hello.
Yes, I have an point. In the words of Abraham Lincoln,
Could you turn your TV down, please? The point being, give them more time. When in opposition, they had 23 years to build a manifesto. 23 years to look and says, okay, if they were ever to get in power, if we do these 10 programs, we will change the economy to what they felt would be better. They got into office and froze because they had no plan, or they threw some of the plans away they had. Now, when you put that Ttable together and you compare the significant achievements of the PPP government over a decade, when it was very difficult without oil money, without the prospect of oil, without the prospect of new money, you had to pay debt back. You had to create opportunities. You had to create job opportunities. You had to bring foreign investors in our country without the prospect of oil. And you were able to sustain a growth economy for a decade long. Then, now we have the future of oil. And when you have the future of oil, Exxon, for example, stock price went sky high. Every time they announce oil find, their stock price go up. They borrow money on that oil find. Our government, current government, went and took $18 million on a multi-billion-dollar economy with oil, our economy. If you just look across, let's go to the United States, for example. If you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, the CEO of CBS, I think, was fired a couple months ago for sexual harassment. And he was given $100 million severance pay. To become the CEO of CBS or Exxon, you're talking hundreds of million dollar sign-on bonus. And if they fire you, hundreds of millions of dollars severance pay. But our government, with $1 billion plus multi-billion dollar oil economy coming on board, went and took a mere $18 million sign-on bonus. They thought it was big. I can tell you, $18 million to Exxon is like giving you $1 in your pocket today. That's how an $18 million check to Exxon is. And we've got to wonder, why are we in the position as a country today? Going forward.
hello?
Yes, hello.
Yes. Good day, sir.
Good day.
I heard you say the coalition do not have the manifesto. They had a manifesto plan to kill the Guyanese, punish the people, destroy business, bring the economy down to the ground. That's the manifesto of the coalition, sir.
Thank you.
That's all.
Very good point. I mean, whether they intentionally had that plan, the lack of competence, the lack of vision, the lack of leadership. People say President Granger is a nice guy, but he lacks leadership. He lacks vision. He lacks the economic know-how to change a nation and to continue the stable growth. So at the end of the day, when the Minister of Finance put all those 200 plus taxes approved by Granger and his cabinet, that was a death warrant. The caller used the word kill. It killed our economy. People don't realize, or they don't realize, money makes money. The more money I have in my pocket, I'll spend it. I will go and invest. I will create new opportunities. And when money flows, new things happen. What government did was take our money. They collected all these taxes. They spent it on lawyer fees. They spent it on salaries for their ministers. Now we see those same ministers that resigned is now probably making more money than they made as a minister, because now they're not a minister, so they can get a contract to make more money than is authorized by the parliament. And those same ministers are in the same positions. While we brought another minister, so now the foreign ministry is spending more money than it was spending a week ago. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our money. Whether or not we believe whichever government is better, it's our money they're spending. Every time they tell us that Minister Greenidge is now foreign secretary, guess what? He's getting the same salary or more. But we brought over the former junior minister of health as the minister of foreign affairs. So now we have two people getting double money doing the same job as one person was doing. If you don't tell me that's incompetence, if you were to run your household or your business that way, you would go bankrupt. Good evening, can I help you?
Good evening, sir. I would like to make a comment. The president that's running the country and the minister that's running this country here right now, when they're sick, they're going overseas to see doctors. What happened to our country with our doctors that we have here? They're not fit to look after them, just as how they're looking after the citizens of this country, all of us here. What happened to the doctors? And whose expense have to pay for that so they could go on a plane? Whatever they get something happen to them, they go overseas to get looked after.
Thank you. Very good point. Very good point. And this helps me to bring back 2 points that I've made in the past. The current government, when they were in opposition, disapproved a funded program funded by the Indian government to build a specialty hospital in Lindendal. That specialty hospital would have served as cancer, heart transplants, kidney transplants, many of internal medicine diseases that may come up in our nation. And that opposition at the time, now government, disapproved it in parliament with their 33 votes. Now they're in government, they take our money and, as the caller said, travel to Cuba or wherever else. I've always said the president could have stayed right home and get the best treatment in our nation had he not disapproved that specialty hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very short program tonight, but as we think through the future of our country, the future of our nation, I beg you and I ask you just not even to play politics. Let's just build that Ttable, make that decision about what is best for our country. How do we need to govern going forward? With our economy changing, with our economy about to open up to new endeavors, we've got to make sure that we make the right decision. One last call here. Yes, good evening.
Night, sir.
Good night.
I think after the CCG ruling, all the monitors of men said after this 24th March, it should be put it on hold and responsible and let it keep the consequence. Unless some of them go to jail.
Great, thank you. Yes, I mean, based on the CCJ ruling, a lot of things will happen in our country. I hope that they rule with more clarity for election date. And again, as I said, regardless of the ruling, we all have to be thinking, what does our future look like? What does the future of our children look like? How do we make the right decision going forward? What is best for our country? What is best for governance? And as you look at that, if you even come up to give this current government more time, that decision, in my mind, would be detrimental to our future of our young people. They have proven in a very short period of time that they have zero vision. The president lacks the knowledge. The cabinet lacks the ability And they believe that we as citizens are low lives. Our job is to pay them taxes. Our life is to give them a good life. They're not giving us a good life. They think that we should give them a good life by paying our taxes. You know, not 14% VAT, it's technically 19% when you calculate all the new taxes. That is how they're taking our money. To spend it on lawyers, the CCJ, not even our lawyers, to be spending it on travel with their ministers to train that, travel to Cuba for treatment, great vehicles, 2-3 ministers in one ministry. That is where we cannot allow the future of our nation to go further. We've got an exciting future ahead of us. We've got a great roadmap. The PPP plan is to change our economy, build the sectors that need to be rebuilt, create the new sectors, and use oil as just an enabling factor. You will do better in manufacturing and tourism and agriculture and mining than you will do in oil. Oil will just be one of those industries that enable us to build out our infrastructure, build out our other plans to move our nation forward. Every one of us as citizens benefit. It's not a barrel of oil for each of us. It's how we individually and families and our young people can have the right level jobs, the right housing, the right ability to improve our lives, and the ability to take care of our families. That's our future. And that's where a PPP government, as we go into the election cycle, is going to present to you a plan that will show you how realistically it will happen. Thank you for joining me tonight. God bless you.